All right, so I'm going to go through this question number 6 on page 135. In this problem, we are told that the quantity of units sold, which is X, is equal to minus 20 times P, where P is the price per unit, plus 500. And this is for P between 0 and 25. We know that the revenue is a product of X times P, so product of X and P. And then we're asked to answer these questions right here, just like before. Express the revenue R as a function of X. Find the revenue if 20 units are sold. Graph it on our graphing utility. Work out what quantity of X maximizes revenue. Find that maximum revenue, and then finally work out what price the company should charge in order to maximize that revenue. All right, so let's get to it. I'm going to start with, I think I'll just start with my revenue equation. So this is question number 6 on page 135. So our revenue, we've seen before now, is X times P, number of units sold times the price per unit. We are told in this question that X is equal to minus 20 times P plus 500. And this is for P between 0 and 25. Okay. We're asked for OR of X. So we're asked to express our revenue as a function of X. And so what I'm going to want to do here then is replace P in this equation with some function of X. Well, I have X in terms of P in this equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange this equation so that I have P in terms of X. So to do that, I'm going to add 20P to both sides. So that will give me 20P is equal to, I'm going to subtract X to the other side. And so I will have minus X plus 500. And now to get P by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 20. And so I will get P is equal to, that is negative X over 20 plus 500 divided by 20 is 25. That's it. That is P as a function of X. I'm now going to take this value for P and I'm going to plug it in here. So I will have then that OR as a function of X is equal to X times P. Well, that's going to be X times minus X over 20 plus 25. And if I distribute this, it means then that OR of X is minus X squared over 20 plus 25. And that is part A of my question done. That is part A complete. That is revenue as a function of X. Pardon me, I should have an X here, X there. That is revenue as a function of X. All right. Second part of the question asks, what is the revenue if 20 units are sold? In other words, what is OR of 20? Well, let's see. All I have to do is find OR of 20. In other words, I have to substitute in 20 into my equation here. And so I will have minus, that will be 20 squared over 20, plus 25 times 20. And if I work this out, well, I've got minus 20 squared is 400 divided by 20 is 20. So I get negative 20 plus 25 times 20 is 500. And so that is minus 20 plus 500, 480 units of currency, $480 if you like. That is my revenue if 20 units are sold. That is OR of 20. And that is part B complete. Part C asked me to graph my revenue function on our graphing utility. So that means I'm going to graph this function right here on my graphing utility. Take out my graphing calculator. And I'm going to go here, y, that brings up my screen where I can input my functions, and I want negative x squared over 20, x squared divided by 20 plus 25x. That's it. And if I graph that, I get a parabola. Now, just a word here about how I adjusted my window so that my parabola would sort of be centered, as it were. What was my domain of x, and what was my range for my revenue? I chose my x minimum to be -10, and my x maximum to be 610. I think that's actually left over from a previous question, even though it fits quite nicely here. But if I want to find out what my domain of x should be in this function, what I actually did was I went here, I went back to this original equation, and I inputted my values for p of 0 and 25. So if p has a value of 0 in this equation, well then x has a value of 500. X is a value of 500. And if p has a value of 25, which is the maximum value of the domain right here, then x has a value minus 20 times 25 is minus 500, plus 500 is 0. Then x is a value of 0. And so the domain I chose for my revenue equation right here is from 0 to 500. From 0 to 500. As it so happens, my x minimum here is -10 to 610. I could change that if I like to 510. It would fit a little bit nicer. My scale is every 100. That's fine. My y scale, again, goes from -10. My maximum value, well, I know that my range for my x value is from 0 to 500. I have worked out the revenue for 20 units to be 480. So I just chose arbitrarily 5,000. 5,000 is my maximum value. And I find that that works pretty nicely. You don't have to go up as far as 5,000 if you like. But that causes my function to appear pretty centered on my screen, which is all I'm looking for. All right, so that's it. That is my function graphed on my graphing utility. So that is part C of the question done. Part D asks me to work out the maximum value. So in other words, what I want, the value of x that maximizes revenue, in other words, and to find that maximum revenue. In other words, I want the maximum value of this curve. And to do that, I'm going to use my graphing utility. So I'm going to calculate, second function, calculate the maximum value. That's number 4 there. So 4. And I want to input a left bound and a right bound. And then have a guess around there. And you can see that it gives me 249.99999. So that is, x is 250. So my x maximum, it occurs at 250. Note that it is exactly halfway between 0 and 500. My y max then, I can also read that off. That is my maximum revenue. Right here, revenue is on this scale. It occurs at 3125. And so my R max, maximum revenue, occurs at 3125. I say dollars or units of currency right there. So that's my maximum revenue. All right, and so that's part D of the problem complete. Last part, part E, asks me to work out the price that I should charge to maximize revenue. So for that, I'm going to go back to my original equation, which is one of my first equations, this one right here will do. I will check, I want this price, so P max is going to occur at X max. And so P max is equal to negative X max over 20. Well, X max we have worked out is 250. So that is minus 250 divided by 20 plus 25. That is going to be my P max. I'm simply inputting in here for X, my X max value. And so minus, my zeros will cancel, minus 25 over 2 is negative 12.5 if you like, or 12.5 plus 25. And minus 12.5 plus 25 is positive 12.5. So that's 12.5, and because I'm dealing with price, I will add a 0 here, 2 decimal places, $12 if you like, and 50 cents is the answer. That is the price that the company should charge for their product in order to maximize revenue according to this equation right here. And that is the problem complete.